It was late afternoon when the Tennessee sky opened up without warning. Rain slammed against my windshield as I pulled off near the old Harpeth Bridge, hoping to wait out the storm. That's when I saw them two small figures huddled beneath the bridge, pressed against the cold concrete. At first I thought it was my eyes playing tricks on me, but when one boy looked up the world seemed to stop. Caleb. Then another face, Jonah. My grandson's. The same brown eyes as my late son, Ethan. The same frightened look I remembered from his childhood. I dropped my umbrella and ran, heart pounding, mud soaking my shoes. 2 years ago, their mother told me they'd moved to Canada after Ethan's death. But right now, in the middle of a thunderstorm, under a bridge outside Franklin, Tennessee, they were here. And everything I thought I knew was about to unravel. My name is Ruth Whitaker. I'm 68 years old, and until that night, I thought I understood what grief was. I live in a modest one-story house just south of Nashville, the same place where I raised my only son, Ethan. He was 38 when the accident happened. Rain, slick highway, hydroplaned truck, gone before the paramedics arrived. They said it was quick, that he didn't suffer. I never believed that. After the funeral, his wife, Brittany, told me she was moving with the boys to Canada. She said Tennessee held too many memories, too much pain. I wanted to visit, to help, but she stopped answering calls, blocked my number, and sent one short email that said, "Please don't reach out again. It's better this way." For 2 years I told myself they were fine, that she was doing her best, that somewhere far away my grandsons were growing up safe and loved. I filled the silence with quilting classes, volunteer shifts, and long drives through the country, anything to keep from wondering why the ache in my chest never faded. I had no idea that all this time my family hadn't been thousands of miles away. They'd been right here, living a nightmare I couldn't have imagined. The quilting workshop had just ended when the first drops began to fall. By the time I reached my car, the sky had turned the color of bruised steel, and the wind carried that sharp, electric scent that always comes before a storm. I decided to wait it out beneath the covered area near the community center. From there, I could see the creek below, swollen and angry, rushing toward the old stone bridge that spanned it. Something moved beneath the arch, a flicker of motion that didn't fit with the rhythm of the rain. I squinted through the downpour, two small figures crouched low, clutching something close. At first, I thought it might be a stray dog or a pair of runaways. But when the lightning flashed, I saw faces, pale, soaked, terrified. Children. Instinct took over. I grabbed my umbrella and stepped into the storm, slipping on the mud as I made my way down the embankment. "Hey there," I shouted over the roar of the rain. "Are you okay?" No answer. The closer I got, the more my heart pounded. Then one of them turned his head, and even through the shadows I knew. The slope of his nose, those eyes. "Caleb?" I whispered. He froze. "Grandma?" The second boy looked up, identical face. "Jonah." My grandsons, soaked, trembling, and hiding under a bridge 2 miles from home. For a few seconds I couldn't breathe. They looked thinner, older somehow, but there was no mistaking them. I dropped to my knees in the mud and pulled them close. "What happened? Where's your mother?" Caleb's lip trembled. "She's not here." "Jonah wouldn't meet my eyes. She said you didn't want us anymore." My heart twisted. That's not true. I never stopped loving you. The rain was coming harder now, soaking through my cardigan, but I didn't care. "Come on," I said. "Let's get you somewhere warm." I helped them up the embankment, one hand on each of their shoulders. As we reached the top, headlights swept across the bridge, and a man stepped out of a red pickup. He was in his 50s, heavy-set, wearing a rain jacket. "Everything okay down there?" "I'm just helping these kids out of the storm," I said. He squinted at the twins. "Those are Brittany's boys, aren't they?" The way he said her name made my stomach tighten. "Do you know her?" I asked. "Know her?" he smirked. "I've been looking for them. Their mama's worried sick." His hand went to his phone. "I should call her." "No," I said sharply, my voice cutting through the rain. "Who are you?" He hesitated. "Name's Derek. I'm her boyfriend." And just like that, everything inside me went cold. By the time we reached my car, the rain had slowed to a drizzle, but my hands were still shaking. The boys sat silently in the back seat, huddled together beneath an old blanket I kept for emergencies. When I looked in the rearview mirror, I saw two faces that shouldn't have known fear like that. At home, I rushed them inside, turned on every light, and handed them towels. "Hot showers first," I said. "Then food." They ate like they hadn't seen a meal in days, 3 sandwiches each, soup, cookies, and still they looked hungry. Only after they'd eaten did they start to talk. After Ethan died, Brittany had stopped coming home, they said. Then came Derek, loud, angry, always drinking. He yelled, sometimes hit walls, sometimes worse. 6 months ago they were evicted. She said she'd come back, Jonah whispered, but she never did. Caleb added quietly, we stayed in parks, behind gas stations, anywhere. I tried to steady my voice. Did anyone know? She told us not to tell, said if people found out we'd be taken away. The words shattered me. I looked at their thin arms, the bruises half faded on their skin, and I knew this wasn't neglect. This was abandonment. And for the first time in years, anger burned hotter than grief. No one was taking these boys from me again. It was close to midnight when the house finally grew quiet. The boys were asleep in the guest room, wrapped in clean sheets, breathing steady. I sat in the kitchen with a cup of tea I couldn't finish, staring at the rain streaking down the window. That's when the phone rang. An unfamiliar number. "Mrs. Whitaker?" a woman's voice asked, calm but firm. "This is Lieutenant Anita Brooks with the Metro Nashville Police Department." My chest tightened. "Yes?" "I'm calling regarding 2 minors, Caleb and Jonah Cole. Their mother, Brittany, has reported them missing and possibly abducted." Abducted. I nearly dropped the phone. I found them living under a bridge. "She claims you've been harassing her and that there's an ongoing custody dispute." "That's a lie," I said sharply. "I haven't seen her in 2 years. Lieutenant Brooks exhaled. "Then I suggest you come to the precinct tomorrow morning to make a statement." Before I could answer, another vibration lit up my phone. A text from an unknown number. "You don't know what you're getting into. Give them back before someone gets hurt." I stared at the screen, my heartbeat echoing in my ears. Someone knew where we were. And I wasn't about to wait for them to knock on my door. I didn't sleep at all that night. Every sound outside made me flinch, the creak of the porch, the hum of a passing car. By dawn, I knew I needed help. I called my friend Paula, who'd gone through a messy custody battle years earlier. She gave me the number of a lawyer she swore by. "Caroline West," she said. "If anyone can protect those boys, it's her." Caroline arrived 2 hours later, a tall woman in her 40s with calm eyes and a firm handshake. "First rule," she said as she set her briefcase on the table, "you don't speak to anyone without me present. Not the police, not Brittany, not anyone connected to her." I nodded. I showed her everything, screenshots of Brittany's posts, the threatening text, photos of the boys' bruises. She took notes fast, her pen never stopping. "We'll file for emergency custody based on abandonment and neglect," she said. "Before we do that, I need medical documentation." An hour later, we were at the urgent care clinic. The doctor examined the boys quietly, his face growing more serious with each note he wrote. "Underweight. Signs of chronic malnutrition, scaring consistent with old injuries." When he finished, he looked at me and said softly, "They've been through a lot, ma'am." I squeezed his hand and whispered, "You have no idea." The courthouse smelled faintly of old paper and coffee, too ordinary a place for something that felt this big. Caroline led the way, her heels clicking against the tile, a folder tucked under her arm filled with everything we had. Caleb and Jonah sat beside me in the hallway, clutching each other's hands. When the door opened, I saw her. Brittany. She looked nothing like the woman I remembered. Slimmer, tanned, hair perfectly straightened, wearing a cream blazer that probably cost more than my rent. Behind her stood Derek, jaw tight, and a young lawyer who looked like he'd stepped out of a catalog. When Brittany's eyes met mine, her expression hardened. "You stole my children," she hissed. Caroline immediately stepped in. "Ms. Cole, I advise you not to speak to my client." Inside the courtroom, Judge Denise Carmichael reviewed the evidence with a frown. "Ms. Cole," she said, "you told multiple people you moved to Canada 2 years ago. Yet your financial records show residence in Dallas. Can you explain that? Brittany's lawyer tried to spin something about privacy, but the judge wasn't buying it. Then came the medical report, the boys' weight, their injuries, the photographs. The silence was suffocating. Finally, Judge Carmichael said, "Emergency custody granted to Mrs. Whitaker. Ms. Cole, you are not to contact the minors until further review." I exhaled slowly. For the first time in 2 years, I felt hope. That night, after putting the boys to bed, I sat alone at the kitchen table, surrounded by files, old photos, insurance papers, and the accident report from 2 years ago. I'd avoided looking at it for so long, but now something kept tugging at me. The route. Ethan's accident had happened on Highway 41, miles from the road he usually took home from work. The report said it was raining, visibility poor, blood alcohol level 0.09. But Ethan didn't drink, not like that. A single beer on Sundays, maybe a glass of wine on Christmas, but drunk? Never. I flipped through the report again and saw a small handwritten note from the officer on scene. Anonymous caller reported a possible drunk driver 20 minutes before crash. Vehicle description matched. Anonymous. Someone had wanted that detail on record. If the crash was ruled an accident, Brittany collected double the life insurance payout. $250,000. Exactly what she'd lived on for the past 2 years. My stomach twisted. No, I told myself, it couldn't be. It was just grief talking. But deep down, something colder whispered the truth. Maybe Ethan didn't just die. Maybe someone made sure he did. And if that was true, then everything that followed wasn't coincidence. It was cover-up. The next morning I called Lieutenant Brooks. She listened quietly as I explained my doubts about Ethan's death, the strange route, the blood test, the anonymous call.
"I understand your concern," she said, "but we'd need something concrete." A few hours later, she called back with a name. Victor Salazar, former phlebotomist at Precision Medical Labs, the same lab that processed your son's blood work. The facility was shut down for falsifying toxicology results. My grip tightened on the phone. Falsifying. "Mostly DUI cases," she said. "We're checking if your son's was one of them." Meanwhile, Carolyn uncovered Derek's bank statements. A $10,000 cash withdrawal made 2 days before the crash.
Phone records showed multiple calls between Derek and Victor that same week. It was too much to be coincidence.
I also tracked down Ethan's old mechanic, Joe Ramirez.
Your boy took care of that truck like it was his baby, Joe said. Brought it in just a week before the accident. Everything checked out, especially the brakes. That word brakes hit me like thunder. When the accident photos arrived, I spread them across my dining table, one by one. And there it was in the corner of a grainy shot, a clean slice across the brake line. Deliberate, surgical. Not wear and tear sabotage. Someone had killed my son. And I finally knew where to start looking. Caroline and Lieutenant Brooks came to my house the next morning. The air felt heavier than usual, thick with the kind of tension that settles right before something big. Brooks laid out the plan. "We'll arrange a mediation meeting," she said. "Brittany's lawyer already wants one. We'll let her think you're scared, ready to give up custody. You'll wear a wire." I stared at the small black microphone she set on the table. "You want me to bait them into talking?" Caroline nodded. "They're arrogant, Ruth. People like that can't resist showing their cards when they think they've won." We rehearsed what I'd say, calm, measured, never confrontational. By the time I left for the meeting, my palms were slick with sweat. The conference room was sleek and sterile. Brittany sat across from me, flawless as ever in her white suit, her expression carefully composed. Derek leaned back in his chair, restless jaw flexing. Their lawyer smiled like he already knew the outcome. "Mrs. Whitaker," he began smoothly, "my clients are willing to be generous. Drop the custody petition, and they'll allow visitation rights." I leaned forward. "And the insurance money? The $250,000 meant for Ethan's boys, where did it go?" Brittany's smile cracked. "That's none of your business." "Then maybe Derek should answer," I said quietly. $10,000 withdrawn 2 days before Ethan's crash. Calls to Victor Salazar, the same lab that doctored my son's blood work. Silence.
Derek's face drained of color.
You can't prove that, he muttered. I met his eyes. Maybe not yet, but you just did. The room shifted, and before anyone could move, the door burst open. Detective Brooks and her team stepped inside. It was over. Derek Shaw, Brittany Cole, Lieutenant Brooks announced, her voice firm and steady. You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, and child abandonment. The color drained from Brittany's face. Wait, this isn't what it looks like, she cried, trying to stand, but an officer was already behind her, cuffing her wrists. Derek lurched to his feet. You can't prove anything. Brooks nodded to one of her team members. We have the recording, Mr. Shaw. Every word you just said. Brittany's lawyer tried to intervene, sputtering about miscommunication and misrepresentation, but no one listened. I sat frozen, my heart pounding so hard it drowned out everything else.
Then Brittany turned to me, her mascara running down her cheeks. You don't understand, she said, trembling. He was going to leave me. I just wanted to scare him, make him crash a little. It wasn't supposed to happen that way. Her voice broke into sobs. Brooks looked at her coldly. Tell that to the jury. As they led the two of them out, I stayed seated, gripping the edge of the table. The room smelled of fear and rain-soaked clothes. It was finally over, or so I thought. But endings are never that simple when blood and lies mix. After the arrest, silence filled the house like a heavy blanket. No more late-night phone calls, no more strange cars parked down the street. Just peace and two boys trying to remember what safety felt like. The first few weeks were hard. Caleb woke from nightmares almost every night, convinced someone was at the door. Jonah barely spoke at all. I filled our days with small rituals, pancake breakfasts, evening walks, quiet hours spent rebuilding trust. Slowly, they began to smile again. One afternoon, I found them at the kitchen table, huddled around my old laptop. Lines of code filled the screen. What are you working on? I asked. Caleb grinned shyly. Dad used to teach us this stuff. We're trying to build a program. A simple one, Jonah added, to help small stores track their sales and inventory, like Grandpa's hardware shop used to do. They called it Riverlight because, as Jonah said, it's about finding light under the bridge. I felt tears sting my eyes. Over the next months, they poured themselves into it, coding after school, learning from online tutorials, fixing bugs late into the night. When they weren't working, they helped neighbors set up computers or repair old phones. Purpose replaced fear. And for the first time in years, laughter filled my home again. The trial moved faster than anyone expected. Brittany took a plea deal, 25 years with no chance of early release. Derek got 35, and Victor Salazar, the lab technician who falsified Ethan's toxicology report, received 10. When the verdicts were read, I didn't feel triumph. Just a quiet ache. Justice had been served, but there were no winners here, only survivors. Judge Carmichael called me to the bench afterward. Mrs. Whitaker, she said, the boys are lucky to have you. I'm granting you permanent guardianship and establishing a protected trust fund. No one touches that money without court approval. I nodded, unable to speak through the lump in my throat. When we got home, the twins ran straight to the porch swing, shouting with laughter as they pushed each other higher. The setting sun painted everything gold. For a moment, the world looked the way it used to before the lies, before the loss. That night, as I tucked them in, Jonah whispered, Grandma, are we safe now? I kissed his forehead. Yes, sweetheart, we're safe. And we're home. Then, for the first time since Ethan's death, I slept through the night. No dreams. No fear. Just peace, the kind you earn, not fine. Looking back, I've learned that courage doesn't always look like a fight. Sometimes it's just standing your ground when everyone tells you to sit down. It's driving through the storm because your heart says you have to. It's choosing truth, even when it shatters everything you thought you knew. If something feels wrong, follow that feeling. It's your instinct trying to protect you. If someone you love is in trouble, don't wait for permission to act.